You are listening to the Freedom Podcast with Van Moody. Our desire is that you begin to live in freedom every day. Freedom in your mind, freedom in your finances, freedom from the external pressures of life. Prepare to be transformed as we seek to be free, mind, body, and soul. Let's get started.
Hey friends, thanks for joining us on today's edition of the Freedom Podcast. On this podcast, we cover a variety of topics, but all of these topics are important for your best life, a life of freedom, hope, purpose, and fulfillment. And while we cover a variety of topics, one thing that we do consistently each and every month is that we dig into financial freedom. And that's why I am on today, once again, joined by my co-host with the most, all the way from LA, the money maven himself, George B. Thompson. How you doing, my brother?
Man, I'm doing awesome. I'm so glad to be here, ready for an awesome episode.
Yeah, we are talking today, George, about planning for 2025. It is upon us. Can you believe how quickly this year has gone by? And here we are coming to the end of the year.
Yep. Yes, it has gone by very fast, and that's why we got to lean into 2025 and all that we have planned.
Yeah, so I want to always start off by giving us a biblical foundation before we get into the meat of our podcast, because we know that myself and George, we're both pastors, but we're also passionate about equipping you in the areas of finance and freedom. And so, George, when I thought about the fact that we're going to talk about planning for 2025, and we're recording this podcast and it's 2024, right? Initially, the Holy Spirit took me to Habakkuk 2:2. Because in it, the word of the Lord to the prophet Habakkuk is to write the vision. Now, and many of you may know the scripture, write the vision, make it plain so that they may run and not faint, right? But being able to write the vision, first of all, presupposes that you do have a vision, that you have a plan. And what God tells Habakkuk is, don't just have the plan in your mind, or don't just have the plan in your heart, but write it down. Because the key to having a written plan is the very next thing that God says to Habakkuk, so that they can run with the plan.
Right.
People can't run with the plan or walk out the plan if the plan is not written. You can't write the plan if you don't have the vision. And so there's an intentionality that God is laying out for us that also applies to us preparing for 2025. We don't need to stumble into this year. We don't need to be random or haphazard as it relates to what we're going to do or even believe God for financially in 2025. We need to plan it now. And that's why we're doing this podcast. And we got a lot to share with you. I don't know if we're going to be able to get it all in, but we really want to talk about really 4 big buckets that you need to be planning for. You need to be planning for 2025 financially. You need to be preparing for 2025 spiritually. You need to be preparing for 2025 as it relates to your family and how you're going to navigate those responsibilities. And you also need to be preparing for 2025 relationally. Now, I don't know if we're going to get to all of these on our pod, and we may have to do a couple of these to just help you get ready. But the whole point of Habakkuk 2:2 is start planning now. And the plan is not just thinking about it. It needs to be written so that you and your family members and everybody connected, you can run with this plan. So, George, this is a big deal, man. I know that you're already preparing for 2025. I know that my wife and I and our family, we're already preparing for 2025. Our respective ministries and businesses are preparing for 2025.
Right.
And so we want to talk to our podcast audience about what are some of the key areas that they need to be planning for 2025 in. And I think since you are the money maven, we should start with, financially. That's a big rock for a lot of people. How should we be preparing, particularly in light of what's happening with interest rates and inflation and all of the questions around, what's going to happen to the market when, President Trump gets into his second term. There's a lot of speculation around that. And all of this affects us. And we don't need to be caught off guard. We need to prepare for it. So let's talk about it, George.
Let's talk about it. And that's when you said Habakkuk 2:2, and we talked about write the vision, make it plain. Also, I want to remember an important key, because it's going to come to family and everything, is this: when you write things down, you can share it with people and you can remember it. Because when I said
Yeah.
write the vision, it's so that herald, so people can see it. So when they're running, it's like it. Also, you look at different, when you really break that down, it says write it in big block letters. So
Yeah.
that, don't write it small. Like write these visions down, and then write down what your goals are, and then be able to do them as well. So also, though, another key point about what we talked about is we're doing things and planning for 2025 is this. We want to plug what we already done, but we have to do this. We shot some awesome episodes about ending 2024. So we have to look at what we've done in 2024 to set us up for 2025. So the first
Absolutely.
thing 2025 financially is one, plan, but set financial goals right in front of us.
Yep. Yep.
Set financial goals. So when we set financial goals, we're saying what we're going to do. Like, so first of all, look at what we're going to do income wise. Like, so what we did last year, we just made income that way. So one of the things we want to do is, I'm going to write down at least 4 of these. Diversify your income sources. So right now
Yeah.
you just made income. How did you make income? Well, I had this job. Say, hey, what are some things that you want to do to start creating other source of income? It might be in real estate. Hey, you might do this. You might open up. We live in California, the gig economy, where everybody has a side hustle or something else. So find out how we're going to build income and have that on our first thing. So the first thing we do is look at how we're going to set goals, and then look at how we're going to diversify our income. Let me know if you want to jump in here. And then number 2 is, want to have a debt plan. We want to sit down right now and decide how we're going to pay off what we're going to do with our debts and things that we're going to do, because coming upon us, and we'll say something about the end of this, we do financial fasting. So we
Yeah.
want to look at certain things at the beginning of the year that we don't have. So we look at all the subscriptions or everything that you signed up for. Are you utilizing those things? And we want to start doing that. So first, income. Then second, we want to look at how we want to pay off our debts in different areas of things like that. In those
Hey,
areas.
George, let me jump in for a second, because I think one of the things that's extremely important, that I know you and I know is important, but I want to make sure that our listeners understand what's kind of inherent in what we're telling them. And that is, don't make any assumptions and don't
Right.
live your life on autopilot. So
Right.
for an example, if you made $100,000 in 2024,
Right.
when he starts talking about setting expectations and setting goals by way of revenue and debt, the inherent part of that is, okay, so then you should be thinking about, how do I grow that? How can I position myself? If $100,000 was my income for 2024, how then do I think about increasing that? Or
Right.
if there are no options to increase it, how can I then decrease my debt? Because then you're increasing margin. The point is,
Margin.
yeah, don't just be stagnant, and don't just stumble into the next year without having some very intentional plans for how you're going to take the next step on your wealth journey, or on your legacy journey. We talked a lot in 2024 about legacy. Well, how are you intentionally going to do that? You either got to do it by increasing your income, your revenue. You've also got to factor in paying down on your debt.
Right.
George, I'm going to hand it back to you, because you may be thinking what I'm thinking. They also got to make sure that they are taking advantage of as many tax shelters and tax benefits as possible.
Right. Right. So we're going to go right into that. But before we do, also, the one thing we do want to automate is how you give,
Yeah.
and also how you save. So then
Yeah.
also, we don't have a debt plan, but also when we look at how we're income, we want to have our giving plan. And I know I'm going to touch on it now, but also I want to go have a deeper one where we go into this. We go into a little bit deeper as well. But just what is our plan on how we're going to give? Is that we saw all the time during, a lot of people do different giving things at the end of the year, like at Thanksgiving and at Christmas and different things. But you want to have something that is all year round.
Yeah.
Is that many of us listeners that you belong to a church or in different areas, and then make sure that you're tithing. That's where we start. But then also do things also that you're doing over. Like there's certain people that we also sponsor, we also help. There's also different things that you see that are causes that are on your heart that you're able to give for them, but plan for it so
Yeah.
that you have those things set up. So a giving plan in that area. Then also what you said, and then I'll let you, if you want to jump in, anything in there that you want to add to that, you can. But then also you want to do that as far as, I use the term save vesting. That's saving and investing. So you have a 401k if you work for a for-profit company, 403b, some type of retirement plan. You're putting into that the maximum you can put into that, and you want to make sure you're using those tax-deferred plans as absolute best you can. That you start putting in the maximum that you can put into them. So 401ks have limits about $26,000 a year. You start putting into those. Then there's something called a Roth IRA where you pay me now or pay me later. That's after tax.
Yeah.
So by the way, you can put money after tax into that and it grows and can be pulled out tax free. Hey, just so you know, college savings and Roth IRAs, this is a George Thompson opinion, not written anywhere else. I think those may end one day. You want to know why? It's too good of a deal. So that's why I would definitely look at taking, utilizing those things of saving in the tax deferred. But again, 401k, 403b, if you work for a county, it's called 457. If you haven't heard of any of those, it's an IRA. Make sure you're saving for retirement. And then you have a wealth building account. And then, okay, here we go. And I am kicking it back to you. But by the way, before I kick it back to him, I'm the world's greatest dad at 1/3 the price. You have to start saving for your vacations now so that you can have them later on in the year. So you want to start saving for those vacations and also for those trips and also conferences, just different things that you may be going to. Start putting money in a separate account for that. And then you also want to have a wealth building account. Some of those things are things that we've talked about on the show before.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? And I'm going to come back to if we can get to planning for the family in 2025. I want to pick back up on something you just said. But one of the other things, George, that I want to share with our podcast audience is you need to sit down with your tax professional. So, let's make the disclaimer, you and I are not giving tax tips, right? But there's wisdom that we've learned along the journey that we try to pass on to others. But one of the things that I want to recommend that all of our podcast listeners do is, number one, sit down with your tax professional. You ought to have a relationship with your tax professional that is bigger than just them preparing your taxes and getting it in before the tax deadline in April. You really want to sit down and talk to them about how you are currently exposed from a tax standpoint and what are the other opportunities that you can take advantage of. Now, a lot of people think, well, I'm not making enough money. They think, well, if I make $50,000 or I make $75,000, that's not a ton of money, so I don't need to do that. You are absolutely incorrect. You need to do it regardless of what the amount of money is that you make. See, the key is not what you make. The key is what you keep. Oh, that's so good. I'm going to clap for myself. Yeah.
See, I started.
Yeah. The key is not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep. And one of the things that's critical to that is you have got to be able to make sure that you are taking advantage of all of the tax benefits and tax opportunities that exist. But there are a lot of individuals that don't know anything about it. They don't know anything about it. And so sitting down with your tax professional, I'll give you a prime example. If you own a business, and let's just say in 2025, you say, you know what, I've got to get another car. Maybe you have driven your car until the wheels fall off, or maybe you're just thinking about upgrading to get a new vehicle. One of the things you ought to be asking your tax professional is, should you buy the car in your personal name or should you buy the car in the name of your business? See, it's all of those little things that you need to be thinking about now as you plan your revenue and your expenditures for 2025. But the big question is, how do you need to be positioned? And if all you have is somebody that can prepare taxes for you, you don't have your team built the right way. You need somebody who can look at your situation and always say to you, okay, this is great, but if you did this, this is how it would change certain situations as it relates to wealth creation and legacy building. So asking the right questions to the right people is necessary in your planning.
The poorest person on earth is the person without faith. Humanity has been led to a critical crossroad, wondering if there is an alternative to the world as we have made it. In essence, A lot of people have simply stopped believing in anything or anyone. They have simply lost their faith in faith. While it is absolutely tragic to lose a job, to lose a spouse, to lose a child or home or business, these are not the greatest losses one can experience. The greatest loss in life is the loss of belief. When one loses the ability to believe, one loses both faith and hope. When hope is lost, purpose is canceled, and life is robbed of meaning. Belief is the raw material required for commitment, persistence, and faithfulness. No man or woman can live beyond their belief, for without faith, all hope is lost. As a person whose life has been radically transformed by genuine faith, Dr. Van Moody has a passion for helping people understand what real biblical faith is and why it's so important. If our belief is gone, our life shrinks because possibilities are limited and our expectations are low. Believe is a must-read for anyone wanting to understand real biblical faith in order to believe big and live a life full of endless possibilities and limitless opportunities. Visit vanmoody.org or anywhere books are sold to get your copy today.
Gotcha. I got to jump in here. By the way, he's dropped. As we said, we learned that he's dropping some jewelry on you guys. Okay, so look, there's two types of tax preparers, people that help you with your taxes. Okay, there's scorekeepers, and there's tax strategists. A scorekeeper is that you just bring all of your tax documents in the shoebox and you lay it down in front of them. And then, you always start speaking in tongue. You know how people do that and then do the prayer over all that. And then you do that, right? And then after you do that, right, then we speak in tongues, start calling out all these things, things that we want to happen, right? And then they tell you at the end, either you owe money or you're getting a refund. That's a scorekeeper. That's just little like you watch your son play basketball, right? You look up at the scoreboard. That's different. Then you have a tax strategist. And that's a lot of times what we're doing with our clients is we're sitting down with them and saying, what can we do right now to affect our taxes? As you know, the marginal tax rates, if you make this a certain amount of money up to this certain amount of money, you pay this percentage. And then as it goes higher, it just keeps going higher. You want to be at the top of the lowest.
Yep.
So it's the top of the bottom. That makes sense. And you want to figure out how you want to be there. So there's a couple things you want to do. So if you look at this, the biggest ways that people save money on tax, number one is interest, interest on your home, that giving in that area, different areas. So there's just different things you can do. You said about your having a car and then writing that off as a business expense as well. You could also do that, but then also that means having a business and paying yourself a salary. There's just different things that you can do by sitting down with a tax strategist that you can do to make your taxes, and watch this word, be the most efficient. I didn't say we're not avoiding, we're not evading, we're doing things, we're just being efficient with your taxes. So then you want to make sure we're not leaving anything on the table. We're not paying too much, too little, because when you get a refund, do you guys understand what you just did? You just gave the government an interest-free loan on your money. That same money you want to have a hard hat working for you. So you want to make sure that. So you guys, we don't want to have scorekeepers.
We need strategists. Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. And hey, if you're listening to us or watching us and the realization for you is that you have a scorekeeper, then great. The next step is find a strategist. There are some great things that we're going to be doing in 2025. And hopefully, we will be pointing you in some directions and exposing you to the different types of people you need on your team. But you can also start investigating through relationships and asking people, hey, who do you have? And then even sometimes just doing research on who are some tax strategists in your area. The point is you need them, not a goalkeeper, because you're missing out. You're leaving money on the table.
Right. And you want to know something interesting? So I won't plug. Dr. Van, so he doesn't plug him. So I'm gonna plug him. We've done these wealth conferences. We had that tax stretch. She was right before me. I was listening to that. I was writing things down in there because it's a lot like sailing. You can make some changes
Yep.
and have you going in the right direction, but then you can do some things and not take advantage of it and blow you off in a whole nother direction. And there
Yep.
are certain things that you could have done deduction, and that's the worst. Is finding out 5 years. Hey, I didn't do the earned income. Hey, I didn't do. I
Yep.
could have put this in my company could have matched it. I could have done that. The biggest one though is I do have to say one of the biggest ones that I see is people not putting money in deferred accounts. And
Yep.
we've talked about this before, but there's like two people come and work at a company and they say, hey, let's put my money into the retirement plan, the company retirement. I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I'll just wait, or I'll just put in the minimum, a
Hmm.
minimum amount. And then they both work there 10 years. One person walks out with a couple $100,000. One person walks out with a much less. And
Yep.
it's because of the decisions that they made
Yep.
in those
Yep.
areas. So
Yep.
that's very, very, very important.
Well, George, I know you and I are working on another wealth summit for 2025. So since you brought it up, this is definitely something I'm looking forward to us doing in 2025, because you're right. We have done some incredible ones in the past, and I'm looking forward to the new ones that we're going to do in 2025. So let's finish the financial prep bucket. Have we exhausted
Right.
everything that they need to be doing to prepare financially for 2025?
Right. But also, I just want to say that also that people want to do, make sure you're planning for 2025, that also that goes back to your investments. Also, just want to come back to there because it's looking at that. Look at what your investment plan is going to be for 2025. You already led into a couple of things. If you
Yep.
look at it before in 2000, I'm going to go, oh, yeah, I'm going to go back all the way back. Do you know that there was a certain way we invested during the pandemic? If you remember,
Yep.
I did. Wait a second. Wealth Summit. Wait, I'm back to giving a hand already. Do you guys want to know something? This is a fact. Do you remember I said pandemic stocks before that was a term? I said, hey, there's certain things you want to invest in during the pandemic. I started naming companies that would do very well. I still get testimonies. When I came to your church last, people walked right up to me and said, hey, thank you. Like the
Yep.
different things that were in that area. So the way that you invested in 2020 during the pandemic, the certain, if you are a healthcare company that's given the whole, not United States, the whole world a booster shot,
Yep.
might want to own them. So that was 2020. Then with 2021, 2022, then we went through what? High inflation, right?
Yep.
High interest rates. Federal Reserve in 2022 raised interest rates 7 times. 2023 raised them 4 times. And then now the Federal Reserve is lowering interest rates. So
Yep.
wait. So what do we do with our portfolio? Hey, we just remember the sailing? There's certain adjustments we want to make. There were
Yep.
certain companies that did very well in 2022, 2023. But hey, going forward, what are the best investments or what are the best choices? Where's the best place to have our assets? Hey, should I buy a home? Should I do these things? Well, first, we want to have the goal, and then we want to make sure we're putting our investments in the right area. That's why we want to sit
Yep.
down and talk to somebody.
Beautiful.
But those are
Beautiful.
the things that you want to make sure you want to do. So I want to recap something that you said. We want to cut our expenses and cut away the things that we aren't doing.
Yep.
And then we want to put our money in things that we are doing and invest in them. And then the first investment, though, is after giving, is you invest in yourself. And that's in financial education. That's by you coming here and then also becoming one of our partners, doing things, but invest in the education of yourself and then utilize that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, George, like I said, I didn't think we were going to get to all of this. We just are kind of scratching the surface on some things that people need to do financially to prepare for 2025. We haven't gotten to the spiritual piece, the family piece, or the
Yeah.
relationship piece, and so we're going to have to do another pod on this one. And then what we have for our podcast sponsors, those of you that are a part of sponsoring this podcast, our Freedom Funders, Freedom Champions, we actually have some additional financial components that we're going to get into in our bonus episode that we do exclusively for our podcast supporters. So, man, we're out of time already, but we are going to come back and do a part 2 of this one because we got to talk about how do you plan spiritually, how do you plan
Yep.
as it relates to your family, and then also relationships. That's a big one.
Relationships.
How do you plan for that? And so, George, we got a lot to talk about as we help get people ready for 2025. It's going to be,
We are. And then I'm going to say right now, when we
yeah,
do that relationships, don't forget financial intimacy. We're going to talk about that.
yeah,
We're going to
buddy,
talk about that.
we're
All
gonna
right,
deal with
y'all.
that. Well, listen, let's pause here, George, and then let's get into what we didn't talk about under financial planning for our bonus episode for our podcast partners. Those of you that are freedom funders and freedom champions, man, we got something big coming for you. So we'll check you out in our bonus episode. For those of you that have been a part of this podcast today, I hope you've been blessed. I hope that you will share this podcast with friends, family members, coworkers. If you liked our podcast, go out and subscribe so that every month when we drop new podcasts, you get automatic notifications. Hey, go out there and write a blog or something about our pod. Write a great note. Let other people know. You can go out there and give us 5 stars. Give us a great rating, because that helps other people discover this podcast. Before we log off, George, let's make sure that people know where they can find you and get more information about you and what you're doing.
Gotcha. You can find me at georgebthompson.com, and then I have all the social media as well. And then also, you can't find me, just type in ican'tfindgeorge.com.
Excellent. Well, family, you can always find me at vanmoody.org. You can also go out and find more of what we're doing at the Worship Center. It is twccc.org, or you can spell it all out, the Worship Center cc.org. Either way, we are here to serve you. If you go out to vanmoody.org, you can listen to past episodes of the Freedom Podcast, because George and I have been dropping some major jewelry all year, and we want to make sure that you are caught up if this is your very first time checking out this podcast. So thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Freedom Podcast. If you find inspiration, education, or fulfillment in our episodes, consider becoming a partner. Your donation ensures that we will continue delivering quality content alongside some of today's leading experts. Connect with us by becoming a Freedom Friend, a Freedom Champion, or a Freedom Funder. Together, we will continue to produce content that provides hope and healing. Thank you. Your generosity is appreciated.